Order. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Kennedy. Alderman Moore. Here. Alderman French. Present. Vice Chairman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderman Carter.
Present.
Alderwoman Murphy. Alderman Ogilvie. Chairman Conway. 5 present. We have a quorum.
Okay, before we get started, and I'm going to have the sponsor of the bill come up first, to the best that I can, I'm going to go back and forth, pro and con. There's some left over from the other day, so it might be a little bit one way or the other to start. I would appreciate, and in the past, this group has been nothing but polite, and I would appreciate if we would just continue that. Let the speaker speak. I know everybody feels strongly one way or the other. Let's let everybody be heard out. So having said that, I appreciate everybody taking the time out to come tonight, and I would ask for Alderman Cohn to come up and go through it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a little unusual setup here. Normally those are up here. I appreciate you and the members of the committee giving us the time this evening to discuss this very important topic. I'm not going to belabor my remarks too much this evening, as I've covered it a number of times before. And I really want to focus on some of the key, moments, if you will, for me. This topic, as I mentioned the last time I appeared before this committee discussing this bill, is not a new topic. The minimum wage has been around for 77 years at this point. Every single time there's a discussion about the minimum wage and increasing it, there's automatic, pushback on that from a number of interest groups. And, we are witnessing that in our current discussions as a city at this juncture. This is an extremely important topic for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that right now in the state of Missouri, the minimum wage is $7.65. $7.65 is less than $16,000 a year. It is not enough to survive for a single person working a full-time schedule, let alone for an individual who is supporting a family and possibly working 2 jobs to be able to do so and barely making it by. We'll spend a good number of hours tonight debating the merits of that, and I look forward to the discussion. Hopefully it's a respectful discussion. But I am planning on introducing a committee substitute tomorrow at our hearing tomorrow afternoon that hopefully addresses some of the concerns that have been brought to my attention over the last few weeks. I'll go through those at this point in time. So, committee substitute that I'll be introducing tomorrow to Board Bill 83 first tightens up some of the language around franchises. I know that that's been a particular concern because, frankly, some franchises do have the ability to profit greatly from their business model and do have the potential to be excluded from this based off of the small business exemption of 15 employees and less than $500,000 in revenue. So we've tightened that up a little bit to make sure that any type of franchise that's operating within the city would also be subjected to this, so it doesn't put other restaurants at an unfair competitive advantage or disadvantage. We've also taken into consideration some of the programs that help fund our seniors, the indigent, and also daycare providers within the city of St. Louis. A lot of them are paying their employees based off of a fixed rate that's provided to them by the state of Missouri. I personally have been advocating for increases in those reimbursement amounts over the time I've been in office and even before that. I think it's absolutely deplorable that the state continues to reject Medicaid expansion, which is desperately needed by members of our community throughout the state. But we are addressing the concerns of those businesses to the best of our ability to make sure that they're still able to operate within the confines of this board bill. We also are introducing in this committee substitute exemptions for work-study programs and full-time students. There are a number of organizations and companies throughout the region that employ full-time students that are either in college or high school that will hire them on a part-time basis over the course of the summer or during the school year for applicable learning experience and internship opportunities. And so we want to make sure that we're still affording those young people the ability to learn a skill and in a work environment while getting compensated fairly. And also we're addressing some concerns as it relates to small nonprofits that operate. The model that we had for the small business exemptions for 15 employees or fewer and fewer than $500,000 in revenue. Alderwoman Green and I have been having a number of conversations with not-for-profits that may have a substantial number of employees or revenue. However, they don't actually have profit off of that revenue. And nonprofits, unlike for-profit entities and privately held companies, do report their profits to the city. That's another kind of issue that we face from time to time with drafting these types of legislation, is that we need to be able to hold these businesses and employers accountable. And the more readily available information that we have as a city are the number of employees based off of business licenses and things of that nature, and then also revenue, because we collect revenue off of the via taxes or we collect taxes off of the revenue that's collected. So with that, that's probably some of the more significant changes in terms of the exemptions. The other thing that is in the committee substitute, which I think is very important, and certainly, I guess, most important for a lot of the business owners that are in attendance tonight, is that we are taking the implementation of the wage and extending that. And so in the board bill as it currently stands, it would go to $10 upon the mayor's signature, and then it would increase $1 every year through the next 5 years to get to $15 per hour. Instead, what we've taken is a more reasoned approach to that. And upon the mayor's signature, the board bill, once it becomes law, would actually implement a minimum wage of $8.25, which matches what our neighbors to the east pay in the state of Illinois. That is the minimum wage is $8.25. And then it would gradually increase over until 2024 with, on average, about a 75-cent increase in the wage. So a lot of folks have talked about, Chicago just passed a minimum wage law that's at $13. Why is St. Louis talking about, 15? Well, the way this is implemented at this point in time, Chicago's $13 an hour minimum wage goes into effect in 2019. In this committee substitute, in 2019, St. Louis would have a minimum wage of $11.50. And so we still would not be paying as much as Chicago in 2019, which, by the way, is still 4 years out. And so while I hope that appeases some folks, I think that there's still some very serious issues as it pertains to people being able to live and afford food and afford a roof over their head. I've also, over the course of the last few weeks, not only met with business owners, but I've had the great pleasure of meeting people in our community who are without shelter, many of whom work a full-time job. And I think it's extremely disheartening for someone who has full-time employment to struggle to put a roof over their head. Many of them are just right across the street. You can go and talk to any number of people that are laying on park benches, trying to rest from their evening's work, or take a respite from the hot sun of the summer in St. Louis. And they have jobs if you talk to them. Some are on disability, some have mental issues, but you would be surprised the number of folks that are working poor and are literally homeless when they have employment. And so it's a very hot topic of debate. And like I said, I look forward to hearing everyone's comments, but I do expect that we continue to make progress on this bill and set an example as a city for doing what's both fiscally responsible and responsible to the values of our citizens as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Cohen. Next, I'd like to ask Pat White to come up. Pat, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come speak with us. And if you could also state your name and your position.
Thank you, Chairman Vaccaro. My name is Pat White. I'm president of the Greater St. Louis Labor Council, AFL-CIO, and I appreciate the chance to come and speak in front of you and the rest of the committee. Traditionally, the AFL-CIO nationally and locally has always advocated for union and non-union members to make a better wage. I agree with the alderman who spoke earlier that $300 a week and $15,000 a year is deplorable. I also agree that there are things going on in Jeff City as far as Medicaid expansion and anti-labor bills that are deplorable. I can tell you that my board and my delegates passed overwhelmingly a resolution, and I will leave this with the committee to give. I made copies, and there's the original in there, to support the raising of the minimum wage. Like I said, going back many years, locally and nationally, we've always advocated for folks, union and non-union, to make a better wage. I can tell you that as far as labor goes, and I will be brief because I know you have a lot of testimony tonight, but I can tell you there are friends of labor on both sides of this issue in this room and around this area. And where the number ends up, you know, we've had a change even from last week. I leave it up to the Board of Aldermen. But I can tell you that we had overwhelming support for the raising of it. So with that, I will answer any questions. Like I said, I want to keep it brief so you can get as many people in as you can.
And rather than go down the list, does anyone have a question for Pat? Pat, God bless. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Senator, I'd like to have Senator Nasheed come up. I'm doing a little out of order because some people have other meetings they're attending. So, Senator, if you could state your name and position, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, I am Senator Jamila Nasheed, representing the 5th Senatorial District in the city of St. Louis. I'm going to be extremely brief here. Today, many of my constituents work full-time jobs only to see their children struggle to obtain the basic necessities that's needed to survive each and every day. Currently, individuals who work a full-time job at a minimum wage and support a family of 3 will fall below the poverty level quicker than any of us can blink our eyes. And that is unacceptable. The people of St. Louis deserve a better pay for the work that they do each and every day. The minimum wage in the state of Missouri is $7.65, as we all know. At 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, that comes to an annual salary of approximately $16,000 a year. Now, how many elected officials in this room can truly say to themselves and to the audience that they can live off $15,000 to $16,000 a year? I can't. The cities across the country are taking it upon themselves each and every day to raise the minimum wage. These cities realize that the cost of living in urban environments is high, extremely high. The food cost is more. Transportation is more. Utility cost is more. So that is not something that I am not believing that's a fact. That is a fact. So why shouldn't their salaries be more? With bigger paychecks, as we all know, workers in the St. Louis area can promote growth in consumer spending and hopefully can provide an example for the state of Missouri and the General Assembly and the U.S. Congress to step up and do the right thing. According to the National Employment Law Project, states with minimum wage increases, such as New Jersey and Illinois, have not, I repeat, have not experienced an increase in unemployment. That is a myth, and it's not acceptable to accept that myth. It's ridiculous. In fact, those states are actually increasing their employment. Increasing minimum wage, in closing, increasing minimum wage is not a handout. It's a hand up. It's a common sense approach. It's the right thing to do.
I'm going to ask that if we can
And I'm
hold
about
our
to close.
applause until it's
There are
over.
workers. There are workers here, Mr. Chairman.
I get it, but
They have jobs,
I get it.
and they deserve dignity. And that's why I come before you today in the committee, asking that you do the right thing and raise the minimum wage. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, polite applause will be fine. Otherwise, we'll cut things short. Senator, before you go, Senator Nasheed, before you go, does anyone on the committee have a question?
I have a question. Mr. Chairman, I have a question
Okay, absolutely.
to my good friend, Senator Nasheed. Usually these minimum wage issues are raised at the state level. Is there any action going on in Jefferson City to raise the minimum wage?
Yes, I have been promoting increasing the minimum wage for approximately 2 years. But as you well know, we are controlled by Republicans, and the Republicans cannot empathize. We in the city of St. Louis as Democrats can empathize. However, I am going to keep pushing so that we can have a minimum wage on the state level. But to answer your question, I've been pushing it for 2 years now, and I got it out of committee to the floor, and the Republicans didn't bring it up.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Moore?
That was my question. You have a Senate bill out for that?
Yeah, Blake, what was the Senate bill? I had like 10 bills. It was 215.
215?
Yeah, 215, and you can take a look at it. But I passed 5 bills this session, though, so on the governor's desk, so I can't remember all the numbers, you know.
Any other questions for the senator? God bless, thank you for coming out.
Go to committee.
I would like the restaurateurs have a presentation, so we're going to go ahead, and this will be the, I'm sure, the other side. I would ask that even if you're opposed to what they have to say, that we don't boo, hiss, you know, let's be polite, because it's a quick way for me to slow this meeting down. I'm sorry, we were having a quick discussion. If you could state your name and your position, and we will give you as much time as you need to do your presentation. So your name and your position, please.
I'm Bob Bonney, and thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this dialogue. I am the CEO of Missouri Restaurant Association. I live in Ellsbury, Lincoln County, Missouri. Included in MRA's mission of service to the industry is our ProStart School to Career program, which provides culinary and restaurant management training for high school students. We have the 4th largest program in America. We also are the leading provider of food safety education. I'm here today because the MRA also advocates on behalf of restaurants. Restaurants employ about 10% of Missouri's workforce. We are an industry of opportunity. We employ more women and minorities in management positions than does any other. 9 out of 10 salaried restaurant employees began in an hourly position. Of current restaurant owners, 80% indicate their first job in the restaurant industry was an hourly position. Half of all Americans will work in a restaurant at some point in their working lives, including the nearly 1/3 of Americans whose first job is in a restaurant. My testimony will focus on the impact of Board Bill 83 on a typical restaurant in the category of full service, average check per person under $15. Restaurants are a very low margin business. Few people realize exactly the extent to which that is true. A typical median pre-tax profit margin for a restaurant in this category is 3% before tax. The source of this information is the Restaurant Operations Report for 2013 to 2014, compiled by the national CPA firm of Deloitte and Touche from an analysis of 138 restaurants in this category. Again, the category is full-service restaurant, average check per person, $15. All amounts are median values and are after removal of the 30%, over 30% of restaurants in this category that were operating unprofitably. 80.4% of the remainder in this category that were analyzed have been in business over 10 years. 88% were independently owned. The full-time equivalent employees are 19.3, including management. Average customer count is 1,730 per week. Staffing levels and ratio of non-tipped employees to tipped employees are consistent with industry norms. We look up and we see total cost of sales of 34%. In this median class, it's a little high than the recommended 32% for this category. Labor costs of 33.5%, including owner compensation of $40,000 or 4% of gross sales, which is the benchmark for measuring and comparing operations of one restaurant to another, are 33.5%, which are in industry norms. You can see that this restaurant is operating profitably. The bottom line of 3% represents $30,000 out of $1 million in gross sales. So the owner has a bottom line to reinvest in the business, which they often are required to do. Restaurants are very capital-intensive businesses. Let's move forward and see to 2016 and see what the effect of Board Bill 83 as introduced would do to this restaurant. We're going to, the minimum wage would be $10. The tipped employee wage would be $5. This is page 3 of the PowerPoint presentation. We assume an average menu increase of 3%, which is a little above the industry norm for the past 10 years. So sales grow by 3% to $1,030,000. As far as cost of sales, we'll look at food and soft drinks only. Last year, the average price and the average wholesale price by the Producer Price Index was over 5.5%. We'll use 5% in this analysis. So food and drink sales go to $318.3. The cost of sales become 35%. Owner's compensation stays the same. The average rate for a non-tipped employee is the minimum wage of 10 plus 3. That represents very significant wage compression. On average, the most senior employee at the restaurant would earn just $3 more per hour than the beginning employee, or $120 a week, approximately $85 a week after taxes. So we keep everything else the same, and the restaurant's picture from a financial standpoint changes quite a bit. It now loses $27,200 for a net change of $57,200 negative. So when you combine the net loss of 27.2 with the owner's compensation of 40, the net performance of this business is 12.8%. The menu price to break even would be 5.7%. The menu price increase to maintain the same profitability as before would be 8.7%. I'll address menu price increases in a moment. In the previous analysis, we kept everything the same except for menu prices and the cost of labor. But we know in the real world, for any of us in this room, they don't stay the same. So page 4 of the PowerPoint presentation, we assume that other costs increase by 2%, which is the Federal Reserve's stated rate of inflation growth. It's consistent with what we saw in Missouri last year. So you can see that a better analysis of what's likely to happen in 2016 and the $10 minimum wage is the restaurant loses, factoring in the natural cost progression increase for the other costs, the restaurant loses $34,100. And the net bottom line of $40,000 owner compensation minus $34,100 is $5,900. You can see that when we get to 2017 and the wage goes to $11.25, that the business is really upside down. And it actually loses more money by nearly $20,000 more than the owner is able to take out in compensation. And matters get progressively worse from there. So restaurants are among the groups who speak on minimum wage, and it is all a part of the fact of what minimum wage increases do to us. We are a very low margin business. We generate very small margins per employee, and our profit margins are low. Any increase that's on a per employee basis weighs very heavily on us. So you can see that when we get to 2020, provided that the restaurant is there at that time, while we might not agree what the restaurant will do, whether they will cut employee hours or raise menu prices in some capacity to offset it, we should all be able to agree that they will need to do something, because a restaurant will not and cannot maintain operations at this level of unprofitability. I wanted to also just bring out some statistics that talk about the difference in the industries. And I think everyone is aware of a research study by the Pew Research Center that ranked the 50 largest metropolitan areas in America on job growth since their low point of the Great Recession that began in 2007. And St. Louis was last. They were number 50 in the rate of jobs created since the Great Recession began. Missouri, not a real knock on St. Louis, Missouri was very low also, was about half the average of jobs created. And I think not only are we low in the number of jobs created, I think it's the kind of jobs that are created. And I think there was other testimony, if I heard correctly, from the National Employment Law Project that talked about service jobs and jobs in the hospitality sector being relatively low-paying jobs, and they are. And I think I want to go through something to show that maybe the problem is also compounded by the lack of job creation and the type of jobs we're creating. Here is a slide from the Fortune 500, published by Fortune magazine, June of 2014. It's the latest that's available. You have Apple with annual profits of $37 billion, with 80,000 employees, or profit per employee of $460,000. We have Exxon of $32.6 billion, annual profit, 75,000 employees, average profit per employee, $430,000. Now, who's the question mark? Who earns an annual profit of $40.2 thousand with 6.2 million employees, or $6,500 per employee? The answer is all of these 22 companies combined. Every general retailer, restaurant, and supermarket company in the Fortune 500. And again, comparatively, profit per employee is extremely small. So I think that part of the equation has to be, how do we bring the better paying jobs into our area? I have one last slide. I know you can't read it on the screen, but it's on your PowerPoint presentation. It ranks annual profit per employee on an industry basis. And to the far left, with the absolute lowest profit per employee, that category is casual dining restaurants. I want to read something also that I noticed from Moody's Investment Services. As of June 11, 2015, I noticed this announcement. A higher minimum wage represents a particular challenge for restaurants. The restaurant operators will have a tough time passing higher labor costs on to consumers without negatively impacting traffic. With soft consumer spending and a high level of promotions and discounts throughout the industry. In the event of higher wages, restaurants will need to bring the wages of all workers to the mandated minimums, but they will also need to weigh the additional costs of retaining valued employees who already make more than the minimum rate. If the gap narrows between employees paid above minimum wages and those brought up to the mandated minimums, workers currently above the minimum may demand that their compensation be increased commensurately, an issue that could end up being the single biggest consideration for affected operators. This statement is from Senior Credit Officer William Fahey. I want to close by saying, although we cannot support, as an industry, Board Bill 83, because it hands to restaurants, in our analysis, a tab they cannot pay. It puts them in a very difficult spot. If your business is upside down, you don't solve that by getting another job only. You have a lease that you're required to fulfill. You have bank loans that still demand repayment. So we're not unable to agree with Board Bill 83, but we want to be part of the conversation as it relates to poverty. And we agree that minimum wage is a part of that conversation. It is hard for us as an association, though, to support a minimum wage that only impacts restaurants in a small segment and provides a disadvantage to them versus their neighbors. Because a restaurant could, in this scenario, could operate under a tremendously different cost structure by moving across the city line. And that's not what we want either. Restaurants in this city are an important part of our community. Our communities and our neighborhoods are better because of their presence. We need to find a way that allows them to stay. That's where they chose to do business, and that's where they want to stay. I've thought a lot about how I would close, because I thought I might talk a week ago. But let me just say this. I'm going to tell you what I really think. MRA is willing to have,
I'm sorry.
MRA is willing to have discussions on minimum wage policy at the state level. And we believe that we are as much against poverty as any organization could be. No one here favors poverty. No child should go to bed hungry. No family should live in poverty. We all agree with that. But we think the best solution, in addition to the minimum wage discussion, has to include job training and education that allows Missourians to earn far more than the minimum wage. And we need to strive to create the economic climate that makes those jobs available in our state. We must be a community that allows small to medium-sized businesses an opportunity to achieve a fair level of profit, to expand and create jobs. Many of Missouri's major employers were once small businesses.
And thank everybody for being polite, and the signs are fine. What I'd like to do is, don't go anywhere, we're going to have questions, and then if Richard from Jobs with Justice, I'm going to have you come up next, just as the counter. So, the questions will actually come from these guys, so who would have questions? We'll start with Chris here.
You know what? I'll defer to Shane since he has more seniority.
Shane, go ahead and ask your question. That's okay. If you're not on the committee, it's still fine to ask questions.
Robert, I want to thank you for the very interesting presentation. I'm curious, I mean, how long have you been with the Restaurant Association?
I became their CPA in '99, became CEO in 2008.
You've been with them for over 15 years at this point and have been the head of the Restaurant Association for the last 8. So 8 years ago, how many restaurants were there in the state of Missouri?
I think the number's been pretty consistently about 10,000
10,000 in the state of Missouri.
locations.
And today there's roughly 10,000 in the state of Missouri. How many times has the minimum wage increased in that time period?
A number. Here recently it's gone up most years because the price of the inflation. It was $5.15 for a long time, went up to $6.50 through initiative petition, further increased 3 times by federal increase in the minimum wage.
So if I recall correctly, when I first started working,
Please use the microphone, the one down here, that's the best one, so everybody can hear your answers.
when I first started working back in 1995, which was shortly before you started working with the Restaurant Association, minimum wage was $4.25. Now it's $7.65. You had 10,000 restaurants then, and you have 10,000 restaurants today. So, I'm not exactly following, some of the arguments that you're putting forth in that regard. And I know every restaurant has a different set of circumstances associated with it as well. How many people are employed by restaurants in the state of Missouri?
About 200,000.
So one of the things that you mentioned in your presentation was the difficulty with raising menu prices to offset the cost that's associated with, increasing a minimum wage is soft consumer spending.
Yes.
So if those 200,000 people that work in your industry made a higher wage, do you think that consumer spending would not be quite as soft as it is?
I think that if you base the assumption on the fact that that if people have more money, they will spend more money. I think that's true for most of us, all of us probably. But my testimony is really directed, Alderman, at the ability of a restaurant to pay the wages that's incorporated in the board bill. And I know that it changed, and I'll be happy to look at
Well, it
that.
hasn't changed yet. There's just a
Well,
proposed committee sub, but understood. Okay, that's all the questions I have for the moment. Thank you.
Any other aldermen, even not on the committee? Well, you're on the committee, so Chris, go ahead and ask your questions. If any other aldermen, even not on the committee, have a question, please come up to that mic over here.
So my first question is, how have restaurants been performing now with our current situation, how it is now?
You know, restaurants are always a tough business. They're low-margin businesses. In this category of 138 restaurants that they analyzed, 30% were losing money. And I can tell you that the ability to pass that price on, especially if you do this in the city, where the restaurants a few miles away will not be required to raise their prices. If you go back to here at the end of this mandate of a $15 an hour wage, and you look at the 137 negative bottom line, they could break even by raising the menu prices an additional 13.7%. In addition to the 3% that's built into the analysis, or 16.7. If you look at the 30,000 bottom line that they had before this, that makes that number 19.7%. And we've never had a year where the average menu price increased by above 5% since 1982.
Right, and you had some interesting statistics, but I found my own statistics that show that when the minimum wage has risen in other cities, that consumers spend more. And would you agree that if the wage was higher, then folks may possibly come and shop and sit and eat at some of the restaurants that you represent?
They may choose to do that. They may not.
Okay.
So we built in sales growth already. And again, the study is based on, is to show the difficulty with which restaurants will struggle to comply with the wage mandate.
Okay, and
Now, I mean, there are restaurants that do twice the volume, but they would require twice the people, twice the food costs. It still doesn't change the percentage of their bottom line.
right. I also read a statistic that said that in Seattle, that they have more restaurants now after they passed the $15 minimum wage bill than they did than before. So, these are just stats that are facts. So do you have anything that can counter that argument?
I've read stories that Seattle has restaurants that have closed in real time as the wages progressed.
Okay.
I think the best I can say is that one side looks at that situation and comes up with a different set of facts. We look at it and we come up with a different set of facts.
Okay. All right. Thanks for your
But
time.
there's not a meeting of the minds.
Okay, thanks.
Alderwoman Green.
Thank you very much for taking the time and coming out today. I have a couple of questions here. To piggyback on Alderman Cone and Alderman Carter, the actual statistic is for every $1.75 increase in pay, about $2,800 goes back into the economy. I noticed that on your budgeting, you only seem to look at increased expenses and nothing on the revenue side. So I'm curious if you have any, backing to your budgetary where, you also look at revenue and not just at expenses.
The revenue increased. The menu prices increased. If you go to the last page, it goes up.
I'm talking about non-increase of menu prices. I'm talking about as a result of increased consumer spending. have you done those projections on what that spending could do to the bottom line of a restaurant? I mean, I know when I have extra money, what do? I go out to eat because I like food a lot and it's a luxury. And I would hypothesize that, you know, a lot of people in this room who are making minimum wage right now would spend their money on such a luxury if they had the opportunity. So I'm just wondering where, you know, what forecasting you have done on the revenue side.
Well, it's based on annual increase of 3%. If the sales grow, but the expenses, on average, the median value are 97% of the net revenue with food costs and all of that, it's still a low margin business. Now, granted, to your point, if the lifeblood of our business, of this industry, is disposable income. We admit that. But for restaurants to continue, there has to be a profit. And a $15 wage, I think we can readily see that revenue is going to have to grow considerably.
So the
Offset.
answer is you haven't done the forecasting on increased
Well, I could do-
spending at restaurants
We
as a
can
result
build it
of
in
more
as far as
disposable
what
income.
it would have to be. But when you get 3% to the bottom line to offset $137,000 loss, when you get 3% to the bottom line is a big number. Restaurants that I speak to don't really view this as it doesn't increase their comfort level with a wage mandate of this magnitude that maybe people will come in more.
Okay. I'll just say that, you know, change is often, you know, not comfortable, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't happen. The other question I have, so, you know, I've done a lot of research too. I've looked at your studies in advance that, you know, you've put out, and one of the things that I think I noticed is that according to the methodology that your study uses, any increase in minimum wage would result in job loss. Is that correct? Is that what your studies have found?
Dr. McPherson, the study there before you?
Yes.
You know, he evaluated a $15 minimum wage in the city of St. Louis. I don't know that I did not read it to say that any increase in the minimum wage creates job loss.
Okay.
When minimum wage went from $7.50 in 2014 to $7.65 now, do I think that created job loss? No.
Okay.
But we're talking about a significantly higher, we're talking about a 31% increase, not just 2.
Okay. And then one final question. So you said that if this were pursued on a state level, you would support a raise in the minimum wage.
We are happy to have that conversation. We had conversations again in 2015 and 2016.
I'll cut all this off. I don't want any overtures. I want to hear what he has to say, okay?
Because if my memory serves correct, when we tried to do this previously, the minimum wage was opposed by the Missouri Restaurant Association at the state level as well.
It was.
Okay.
It was.
Just wanted to be clear.
However, that was then, this is now. We are happy to have and to support sensible minimum wage policy at the state level, as long as it provides all of the other things to fully address the problem of poverty in our state and in our country.
And again, please use the mic because nobody can hear you.
Sorry. We're happy to have that conversation about increasing the minimum wage at the state level in a way that allows small and medium businesses to survive and to thrive. We want it to include other things so that we're not back again here in 2 years talking about, or in a number of years, back when we passed when the voters approved Proposition B in 2006, and we indexed that to inflation. We thought that was something that we would live with for a time. But we had initiated petitions again in 2012. We have petitions approved for circulation now.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, hi, thank you. My question is in regards to what you were just mentioning. Can the Restaurant Association quantify what a reasonable increase in minimum wage would be?
We can't. I mean, we would need to make sure that other industries, we employ about 22% of entry-level workers. And there are other industries that employ the remainder. And we would want to loop them in. We want to make sure, we believe that as was stated by another, that a job and education and training are all important things. We would want to make sure that it did not, in our mind, put small businesses under stress that really have done a pretty good job of leading us out of the recession to some degree that we're in now, that we previously were in. So I can't quantify it, and I can't speak for even the total sum of our industry, let alone all the others. But we would support
You would support an increase?
minimum wage increase at the state level. Now, we may not agree on the amount, but we won't be the association of no, that there shouldn't be any increase. We will support.
Minimum wage is a concrete number. In order to move forward, somebody has to come up with a number. There's no way you could quantify what number would work for the Restaurant Association?
I can't. I'm sorry.
That's all I have.
Okay.
So our members are different. Some are unprofitable now. Some are varying levels of profitability.
We can either leave it as it is, or we can increase it to a concrete number. I'm asking if you have a number that would maybe work for the restaurant industry.
Again, we're opposed to a local wage ordinance because it disadvantages a certain group of our members. Our discussion would be at the statewide level, and we would support it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Moore has a question.
Was your organization involved? Were you invited to the table when this was being formulated to give your opinion on this bill?
We were not. We were not. To my knowledge, I don't know. I haven't talked to, honestly, a restaurateur that became aware of this beforehand and was involved in the discussion.
How long have you known about it?
May 21.
Mr. Chairman, may I inquire the sponsor?
Yes. Will the sponsor answer questions?
Shane, did we talk to the restaurant people about this bill?
The Restaurant Association specifically, no. Well, I shouldn't say that. Before it was introduced, yes. But it had been drafted prior to those conversations.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you have a follow-up question?
Just want to reiterate that we either have to leave minimum wage the same or we have to change it. Do you propose that we leave it the same?
Again, our conversation regarding minimum wage policy must necessarily be at the statewide level.
Okay, thank you so much. Oh, wait a minute.
I just have
Alderman Cohen has a follow-up.
one more follow-up. So back in high school, I had an economics teacher and also my business teacher both told me that, the restaurants, don't ever start a restaurant. 90% of restaurants fail. It's the worst business decision that you could possibly make is by opening up a restaurant. So I have the utmost respect for people who actually, put their lives, their earnings, and everything else out on the line to take that risk and, go out into business for themselves in a very difficult industry. But in this discussion, you have the folks who own their restaurants and, are probably some of the hardest working CEOs out there. I consider, many of them friends, actually. But when you talk about, to Alderwoman Green's point, these numbers that you're, eschewing out here, they are representative of cost side of things for the most part, and how much you would have to increase your menu prices to cover those costs, and not necessarily reflective of, additional consumer spending that's available when 70% of our economy is driven by consumer spending. You also mentioned inflation that, currently, Prop B since 2006, the, state has indexed, its minimum wage to inflation. Inflation somehow has outpaced that index that the state has been using, as I'm sure you can understand and appreciate, which has led us to the discussions that we have here. My concern is that you also referenced the entry-level jobs, that these are entry-level jobs, that you employ 22,000 people, or 22% of the entry-level jobs, through your industry. How many people, what's the average tenure for someone in that entry-level job?
We don't actually track that statistics, although I know that we have high turnover in our industry.
So I understand turnover, but from an occupational perspective, how many people end up working in your industry for their entire life? Because I know quite a few that have, whether they work at McDonald's or whether they work in the actual restaurant industry, and particularly local restaurants, those that are successful and thrive, many of them become families over the course of their life. I have a number in my neighborhood that, the folks that have worked there have been there for many years at this point in time. And, then I have, other restaurants that I frequent that have been around for 40 years, and they still have the same people working there in that entry-level job, making minimum wage.
I'm going to have to respectfully just say that that statement is contrary to what I know about the business and what I've been told about the business. I worked previously for a restaurant that opened in the mid-'80s, and up until the time that he sold his business 2 years ago, the kitchen staff remained the same, and they got increases. I do not personally know a restaurateur that hires someone in at minimum wage and keeps them there. It's very much my information. Have I done an empirical study and gone in and asked how long you've been here, what do you make? No, I haven't.
My question was more geared towards the average tenure and not necessarily, I have restaurants in my neighborhood that pay $9 an hour, and I'm extremely grateful to them for, recognizing that as well. And, I guess there's a lot of opinion out in the public that these are entry-level jobs and they shouldn't be paid a higher wage because they are entry-level jobs. However, when you're looking at the tenure of folks that spend their entire career in your industry, it's actually a lot higher than what the turnover numbers themselves may reflect.
Well, I can say that it is my profound belief that the vast majority of restaurant owners, they pay their people as well as they can. I believe that.
I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you. Thank you so much. God bless. Thank you. I would like, if Richard with Jobs with Justice, he might be outside, but I wouldn't mind having him come up on the con side. Oh, he's right there. Couldn't see. I'm sorry.
So honestly, and
I'm not going to, you won't have a time limit either, so go for it. And then after you, we're going to start doing some time limits to speed things along, but I do want to give you ample time to respond.
So I appreciate the opportunity, Chairman. Honestly, I think the voice that needs to be heard here is not mine. It needs to be the voice of the people that are working in these industries and working on these jobs. And trying to raise a family in this city. So I would respectfully turn my my turn over to Candace if she'd be willing to come up.
Candace, you can go ahead and come on up, that's fine. And then after that, John, after that, you're going to be next on the other side. And if you want to bring all three Southside restaurants. But Candace, go ahead. God bless. Thank you so much for coming out today.
Thank you for
Please
having me.
state your name and position.
My name is Candace Young. I'm with Show Me 15. Okay. My name is Candace Young. I work at McDonald's and I work in home health care, caring for a relative. At McDonald's, I provide great customer service, and I'm very proud of my work. I also work very hard to take care of my grandmother, making sure that she can have the quality of life that we all deserve. Even though I work 2 jobs, I'm struggling because I don't get paid enough. I believe that all work has dignity. Anyone who is willing to work at the job should make enough money to take care of themselves without having to rely on government assistance and food pantries. I love both my jobs, but I don't love the stress of worrying if my paycheck will be enough to cover my bills. We need $15 an hour in St. Louis, and we need it now. I'm fighting for my community and for everyone who works hard but is living in poverty. And at this moment, I also want to speak on behalf of a Conrad who couldn't be here because she could not afford her medicine to come today. Her name's LaShonda Moore. I was a part of the working homeless. Now I'm an impoverished employee. I say this because after I budget, I have approximately $5 left for the month, and that is without budgeting food. I make a little over minimum wage, so I only qualify for $61 in food stamps for a family of 3 because it is configured off of my gross pay, not what I actually take home. I am the mother of 5, but I only have custody of 2 due to my financial obstacles, and I am currently paying child support for the other 3. So I joined this fight to uplift my community, which is congested in violence and drugs. $15 an hour would build a safer playground and better values for our youth, to keep the guns out of their hands, to cut down on 60-hour work weeks, and keep a better eye on our children. To simply be able to buy shoes for all of my children on the same paycheck, to not have to choose between rent and bills, to not wonder if I will make it through the night because I couldn't afford my medication and insurance, as I am the breadwinner of my family. This is why $15 is the right thing to do. LaShonda Moore. Thank you.
Hang on, don't, Candace, hang on, just in case anyone does have questions for you. One question is, what do you live in the city, and if you do, what area?
Yes, I live in North City. I live in the 21st Ward.
21st Ward, okay. And then he made me ask. Any questions from any of the aldermen in the room? Candace, God bless. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, John Ivaldi, and if the rest of the Southside guys want to join you at one time, that's perfectly fine. John's here. He represents. Well, he has a restaurant, but he's also with some of the restaurants from the Hill area.
Hi.
And he'd be on the pro side. Name and position. Oh, it's
Okay.
Name and position,
Gotcha.
please.
John Ivaldi, I own a restaurant in South St. Louis, Pietro's Restaurant. Our family's been there since 1960. I've been running the place since 1974. We first heard about the bill, some of the restaurant people in South St. Louis, maybe 3-4 weeks ago. We said, what's this about? Nobody knew anything about it. Nobody came to us and said anything, what was going on. I've talked to, there's 4 or 5 people here whose families have been there for many, many years that came down here tonight just to see what was being transpired. You know, $15 we thought was totally ridiculous, and I'm sorry if my thoughts are a little disjointed. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I thought I had to come up and say something. I don't mind going up a little bit if we get a reasonable figure, and if we stay at that figure. I do not agree with going up every year a certain percentage. I know my labor cost, and by your figures, if just the figures that were thrown out by the one alderman, 765 to 825 is about 8-9%, 8-9% a year. 3 years is 25%. I cannot recoup that kind of increases in 3 years. If we go up a little bit and hold the line for a while, I think we can stay the course. But we're in a city and we're battling the county on this. Everybody's talking about a city being vibrant. They're talking about Seattle. We are not Seattle. We're St. Louis, and we're trying to build business in the city. If I was starting a restaurant again, I don't know if I would go in the city if I had these increases coming in. I would very seriously consider a county location. I owned a building. We've been there 60 years. Got a lot of money, sweat invested in that property, and we got a lot of employees. Some of the people here know, and a lot of people here are employees, been with us a long time. We try to take care of everybody, but to automatically mandate that you're going to go up and go up every year after that, I don't think it's not going to be able, it's not a sustainable thing.
John, if you can hang on. Hey, John, if you can hang on. Any aldermen? Sorry that there,
Okay,
someone was.
no problem.
Any other aldermen? Any aldermen have a question? Chris?
How many employees do you have?
We approximately have a full-time, probably 25, and probably 50 part-time people. I know there was a bill going about the bus people, about students, which would be nice because these kids need jobs, and you can't start them out at $10 an hour and expect to be able to employ people, young kids. And we got a lot of bus people. Joe's been in our restaurant. We got a lot of young kids running around there working. They get tips. They make money. It's a nice job for them. You can't expect them to make, you can't expect to go to $9, $10 an hour. Those people are not going to be there. They're not going to have jobs.
John, I would ask that if you would put something in writing, and I can get it or whatever, but we'll submit it so we have it for tomorrow.
I would love to.
Okay, God bless, thank you. So what I'm going to do is, because that was pro side, I'm going to start down this, it's con, I'm sorry. So I'm going to start down the list on the pro side, and at this point, I'm going to try and limit it a little bit just to keep, so we're not here to midnight, although I can stay. And it's hard to read, but it looks like the last name is P-O-E, maybe?
Tefpo.
Tefpo?
You're on the wrong sheet.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm on the wrong sheet. I'm new at this. No, okay. I'll start on this sheet? Well, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, hey, since I'm, you know what, Tef, hang on a minute. I grabbed the wrong sheet, so let me start the right way. I'm sorry. I'm new at this. They just hired me. And was that like Paintner? P-E-Y-N? Zenova Paintner? And I'm sorry I had problems with your name. If you could state your name, your position, if you work for a company, or if you live in the city. And if you can keep it short, we're going to kind of move faster now.
My name is Zenova Pointer, and I'm a concerned mother.
Please speak in that.
Huh? Oh, okay. My name is Zenova Pointer, and I'm a concerned mother. Okay, thanks.
Do you work or live in the city?
I work for the state of Missouri.
Do you live in the city?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I live in North Point neighborhood, District 27.
Okay, God bless. Thank you so much.
Okay.
He's making me ask.
My name, again, I said once before, my name is Zenova Pointer. I'm a long life resident of St. Louis City and currently live in North Point neighborhood, where my husband and I raised 2 children, and I just have to give him a small shout out. We are celebrating our 32nd anniversary this Friday. I understand that we are here today to talk about raising the minimum wage, but I am also here today to talk about saving lives. As my son's story shows, the term living village is so much more than just a catchphrase. It is also, it will be 4 years ago this July that my 23-year-old son, Douglas, who our family and friends affectionately knew as Lil D, died of complications associated with sudden cardiac arrest at Boynes Hospital in St. Louis, Missouri. Although my son is known, history He has no history of heart problem. In the weeks prior to his death, he complained to his fiancée of chest pains. However, as a student, a part-time worker, my son did not have insurance and figured it would be too expensive to see the doctor for a checkup. Like some people only making minimum wage and not living wages, my son had to make a tough decision between the doctor and getting the health care he needed to care that could save his life, or providing his family, keeping a roof over their head, and putting food on their table. He just simply did not earn enough money to do both. And these are the same hard choices that so many working people earning minimum wages are forced to make every day. Unfortunately, it proved deadly for my son. On Sunday, July the 24th, 2011, Lil D collapsed while playing basketball game at the neighborhood park. I'm sorry. He never fully regained consciousness and passed away 3 days later. My husband and I raised our son to be a good man and to productively members of the society. He had just turned 23 early in July and has such a bright future ahead of him. He actually worked part-time for the city of St. Louis and was taking community college classes and earning an associate degree in the community college classes. He had also recently proposed to his girlfriend and mother of his 2-year-old daughter, Michaela, which is my granddaughter, has grown up without her father. And our family continues to devastate our loss, our love of him. But we vowed to not let Lil D's death be in vain, which is why I'm here today to tell his story. So in closing, I just want to say to those who worry about the job that may be lost, if we raise minimum wages, what about lives that we could save? Thank you.
Hang on a minute. Sonobi, after you have a minute, in case some people have questions, I would ask, I
can ask questions.
Well, okay, you take your time, sweetie. And I would ask, and I can promise you tonight, your son will be in my prayers.
Thank you.
And I would ask that we all do that. That's just the right thing to do. But I would ask if any of the aldermen, and if you want to come back later, certainly you can. But if you feel up to the questions, if someone has questions, any of the aldermen, I would like them to ask any questions they have.
I don't have any questions, but I do want to thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, well, God bless you. Thank you, and you're in our prayers.
Thank you all.
And your son looks like a handsome young guy. I know, he's a good-looking guy.
Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you so much. On the con side, Gary Wiegard. Name, address, who you represent.
My name is Gary Wigger. I live at Lafayette Square, and I represent St. Louis Tea Party. And ma'am, you have my sympathies. I'm going to try and make this quick. I was told to make it quick. I know that Sergeant Frederick's working here, and he's not paid time and a half. He's not paid overtime, so he's working here on his own time because the city refuses to negotiate in good faith with the sergeants. I'm representing the St. Louis Tea Party here. We are against this bill because this is, in fact, inflationary. I learned this at attending Merrimack Junior College. Not only is it inflationary, but it's anti-free market. What this amounts to is this amounts to big government, which is what the city of St. Louis is. That's big government imposing its will upon individuals and also upon businesses. And I'm going to make that real short. One thing government can do if it wants to help people with their money is when it comes to taking money on receiving tax money on the earnings tax. Everyone here would receive a 1% pay raise if that, in fact, was eliminated. So thank you for allowing me to come testify. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Did we fill out witness forms here, or did we?
No, we don't feel it. Not like Jeff City. Do any members of the committee have any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
So you disagree with the concept of a minimum wage, not just the level of the minimum wage?
I may be against the concept, but in fact, if the state sets the minimum wage, I believe in state's authority, and so the state should be the one who in fact does that.
So you don't think that that would be big government coming in?
I think it is, but the state in fact does have that authority to do that.
So you question the city's authority to be able to do it, the legal authority?
I don't think the city should be able to overrule the state. The state has that authority. Cities are formed at the behest of states.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from any of the other aldermen? Gary, thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
As everybody's. And so we're going the other way, and it's Jim, looks like Brendale maybe, or J, it looks like J-O. These are hard to read, but it looks like Jen.
Jen Birdsdale.
Jen.
Birdsdale.
We're thinking of you, sweetie, I'm sorry. So I'm going to check you off on the pro side. His name, you know the bit.
Of course. Good evening. My name is Jen Birdsdale, and I'm a proud city resident. I appreciate the opportunity to testify this evening. My wife and I live in the Princeton Heights neighborhood in Ward 16 with our nearly 5-month-old son. We made a deliberate decision to buy our forever house in the city of St. Louis, and were proudly married under the arch last November thanks to the city's progressive stand for LGBT equality. We are committed to helping our city become even better for all who live and work here. Although it's not in my written comments, I feel the need to mention that my wife and I really enjoy dining out and consciously try to spend our dollars in the city. That would become an even bigger priority for us if we knew that city restaurant workers were being paid better than those in surrounding counties. I'm here as a citizen and a resident to testify in support of Board Bill 83 to raise the minimum wage in St. Louis to $15 an hour over the next 5 years. I believe it is a fundamental matter of justice that people who are working for a living should be able to live on what they earn. While I'm testifying as a city resident, my professional experience informs my thoughts on this issue. I serve as the executive director of Missouri Healthcare for All and work every day to increase access to health care. Thanks to the Affordable Care Act, moderate-income working people can now get affordable, discounted health insurance through the health insurance marketplace. However, as several people have mentioned tonight, because Missouri has not expanded Medicaid, there are approximately 300,000 Missourians who fall into a coverage gap with no opportunity for affordable health insurance. They make too much money to qualify for the state's Medicaid program, but not enough to qualify for insurance discounts. These individuals live without health insurance, risking poor health, job loss, and financial devastation. And as we heard a few minutes ago, unfortunately, living without health insurance can even lead to losing your life. We are working to close the coverage gap by expanding Medicaid in Missouri, but have faced an uphill battle in Jefferson City. While we keep working at the state capitol, St. Louis can also move people out of the coverage gap. Of the people who are in the coverage gap, the majority are working in jobs such as retail, fast food service, and childcare. They make minimum wage or a little above and get as many hours as they can, but rarely enough to pay the bills. For example, a family of 3 with one person working full-time at minimum wage makes a little less than $16,000 a year, which is less than the federal poverty level and therefore less than they need to make in order to qualify for those insurance discounts. We also know that many minimum wage employees are unable to get regular full-time hours even when they would like to work full-time. Raise the minimum wage and that family can get discounted health insurance. They'll qualify for those discounts and they'll no longer be in the coverage gap. They'll be able to access preventive care and early care to remain healthy and avoid major health crises. They'll also be able to keep their jobs rather than lose them because they are too sick to work. We all know the American mantra of pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, and we admire those we know who have worked hard to better their circumstances. However, we have to have boots to pull ourselves up. Let's make sure that workers can afford to live on what they earn. We will have healthier workers, stronger families, and a more vibrant community, the city we will all be proud to call home. Thank you.
God bless. Hang on for me for a minute. Anyone, any of the aldermen on or off the committee have any questions? God bless you. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you very much.
On the con side, it would be, I'm sorry, he said it rhymes like dagger, but come on up and, I mean on the, you're on the pro side or the con side?
It depends what day it is.
Okay.
I'm on the pro side.
You're on the pro side. So actually I need a con side, so I'll go that direction.
The guy next to me.
We'll go with him and then you. And again,
Hello, Doc.
so we'll go, I'd like to keep it as balanced as I can. So your name, what you represent?
I'm Michael Mott. I'm the CEO of St. Alexius Hospital. In the last 5.5 years as the hospital CEO, I've lived at 206 North 9th Street in the Paul Brown building next to the Culinaria. The last few years, St. Alexius has taken the fight for universal health care, for Medicaid expansion, in the attempt to bring $1.76 billion to the state of Missouri. I am a proponent of Medicaid expansion for Missouri and St. Louis. To date, Medicaid expansion has not been accepted, and Missouri continues to not take $1.76 billion to support our poor. This has had a dramatic impact on St. Alexius Hospital, as decreasing federal reimbursement allowance, that's called FRA, and disproportionate share from not accepting Medicaid expansion decreases St. Alexius Hospital's revenue. Our hospital census remains constant. We're 103 today, inpatient. St. Alexius has not had a Medicaid per diem rate increase since it was constructed, its current building, in 1979. At this point, there is no expectation of a Medicaid state increase. Centers for Medicare, that's CMS, increases run 1% to 2% a year. Located in a health shortage professional area, that's a HIPSA area, our hospital tends to recruit young physicians, train, and they eventually move toward a more lucrative insurance market, most likely a county presence. Board Bill number 83 defines the issues of our time to include the increase in income inequality, the growing gap between the rich and the poor, and the obstacles preventing people from rising into middle class. Our Lutheran School of Nursing graduates 100 RNs and is the only remaining diploma school in Missouri. In fact, I think it might be in the Midwest. I mentioned the Lutheran School of Nursing as we are taking low-pay individuals, housekeepers, PCTs, LVNs, we're educating them. A new RN grad typically earns a starting wage of approximately $20 to $21 an hour, and now they have a career ahead of them. 85% of these students receive grants. Our nursing school graduates are nurses that would struggle in a BSN program, but make great caring and high caliber caregivers. St. Alexius also leases 70 resident slots to St. Louis University, which I would guess is approximately 20% of the university's residents. All would be permanently lost without St. Alexius. St. Alexius was started by the Alexian brothers in 1869. Our mission statement remains the same. Our hospital has 800 employees and 625 full equivalents. My lowest paid employee makes $9.20 an hour. Our hospital average hourly rate is $27 an hour. And when you add benefits, it is $32 an hour. All this is at risk with the loss of FRA, DISH, and not taking Medicaid expansion. You know our fight, as it is your fight to protect and serve our public health. The increase to $15 an hour represents a $1 million increase to St. Alexius expenses a year. St. Alexius could bear an increase to $10 an hour, as it represents only a $30,000 a year impact. Unfortunately, there are a significant amount of staff falling between the $10 to $15 range. In fact, it's about half the employees. Most of these receive benefits, paid time off, health insurance. St. Alexius will not survive a 15-hour increase, assuming the CEOs assuming there's no increase in revenues. At my last Missouri Hospital Association, St. Louis District Council, the CEOs in our market spoke of the impending nurses shortage. Work with St. Alexius to continue to promote low-wage earners through its nursing school and take care of the poor in our community. Education and a career are the way out of poverty. St. Louis needs St. Alexius. Any questions?
Any questions from any of the aldermen? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Let me have you come back up. I'm sorry, I missed one.
Yes.
Thank you very much, and I want you to know that I think most of us up here also agree that, you know, Medicaid needs to be expanded and are with you in that fight. I do have a question, though. Can you tell me how much your top 3 earners at your hospital make?
Below the average rate, in fact, below the minimum of the salary range for the CEO, CNO, and CFO. Actually, I take it back. We have a nurse practitioner that makes more than both the CNO and the CFO.
Okay.
So.
Can you give a range of what those salaries are?
I can't. In fact, the highest paid, we have 2 employed physicians. They're actually the highest paid.
Okay. And their salaries are around how much?
Well, I personally can't give out. They have contracts with the hospital. I can't give that information out.
Okay.
The aldermen are asking the questions.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand your pay structure and you know, where the...
Yeah. I got to tell you, I pay $900 a month in rent. I live at 206 North 9th Street in apartment 606. I have a 2-bedroom. The question was brought up last time I sat here and listened to, in 1985, when I graduated from University of Southern California, we had 4 of us rooming in a $1,500 bed, a $1,500 room in Los Angeles. I now pay $900 and $100 for parking. And I am considered market in the Paul Brown building. So I don't consider that extraordinary, but it is higher than many of the people that do pay in the area, and I realize that. I am on the high end, but I drive a 2005 car, and that is my main transportation. So I have 4 kids in college, and I'm much like everybody else. I can't afford to pay the college bills. But I do hope once they get out of college, I will be able to save. So,
thank you.
I do not have a savings account.
Thank you. And so we're going to go on the other side, and you're on the pro side, and your name is?
Sunny Sagar.
Okay, good. We're online then. Perfect. Dr. Sunny.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Sunny Sagar. I'm an emergency physician and an internist. I'm also a small business owner with presently 35 employees. I founded Downtown Urgent Care around the corner. I've been asked to speak to you briefly today about, I'll try to keep it under 5 minutes, about how I feel about raising the minimum wage as proposed in the board bill. I'm not an economist, but as a business owner, I feel I'm qualified to say what I've seen happen when a well-run business operates with a good long-term strategy. Some companies are fighting this bill so that they can continue to pay low wages on the justification that their income will not increase and their expenses will go up. But I would say that they're trying to cut not just their own throats, but they're also calling to strangle our economy, including hurt my business, because they're demanding that our citizens, the consumers of every business, continue to live in poverty without money to spend in the local economy. Economic growth of any business or any society can be defined as the rate at which we can solve problems. That rate depends on the number of people who actively participate in that problem solving. In turn, that number depends on how engaged and committed those people are. Do you really think they're going to be engaged and committed if you only pay them $7.65 an hour? Only a thriving, happy, and committed workforce can drive a growing economy. A workforce with high morale is the cause of a society's prosperity in a capitalist economy and not the result of prosperity. Raising wages increases demand for products and services, which increases hiring, which increases wages, which increases demand even more, resulting in even more profits. This cycle of increasing prosperity is missing when we don't have a living wage. As businesses gradually increase their wages, we see more money being spent in our economy. And as businesses, we will all begin to do better. We will then need to hire more workers to keep up with the increasing demand that we inevitably experience when we operate in an economy where the consumers can actually buy stuff. When workers have more money, businesses have more customers, or in our case, patients. Instead, and as the young lady said over there, patients who need help, who otherwise would neglect their health. Instead of businesses fleeing the city, as a lot of scaremongers are going to tell you, you will see businesses wanting to come to the city of St. Louis, to a neighborhood with a customer base that can afford to actually buy their products and services. In our business, for example, when one of our medical assistants at the urgent care gets a pay increase, she has some money left over after she pays for her rent, the car payment, and the groceries. She probably buys some shoes for one of her kids. She probably eats out more at the area restaurants and perhaps saves a little too. Perhaps she'll even buy a new car. I know this because I've seen it quite a lot. Poorer folks, and I'm not including myself in that, I'm well off. Okay, so poorer folks spend their money on food and rent, goods and services, and they rev up the economy. Most rich people sock away every extra dollar in savings or the stock market, which does nothing to boost the local economy. A few rich people, the few that have started their own businesses, for example, tooting my own horn, will be in a position to share increased wealth with their workforce. When businesses pay workers a living wage, taxpayers are relieved of the burden of funding poverty programs like food stamps, medical help, and rent assistance that those workers often need. So I agree with my right-wing brethren, let's by all means shrink the size of big government, but not by slashing the poverty programs, the safety net, instead by ensuring that workers are paid enough that they don't even need those safety net programs. If you drive through some parts of our city, you'll see a few little businesses trying to survive, with boarded-up homes just a block away. We opened 2 years ago North City Urgent Care, and there's boarded-up homes just a block away. These businesses need not just encouragement, but support from the rest of the business community, as well as from the local government. So I want to summarize this, and I apologize for sounding patronizing when I say this, but I just want to go through the logic of this. Every business needs consumers to survive and be successful. Consumers are people with money. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking to my kids here, but this one I'm going to... Consumers are people with money, usually money left over from wages after buying their essentials. These wages come from an employer. Therefore, the success of every business depends on the success of every other business. We need to realize that every business is dependent on buyers to be successful, and it's successful only if it solves problems for those buyers. And the best definition of a business is a factory that manufactures more buyers. So as our city leaders, you've got an opportunity here to implement a long-term strategy for the economic growth of our neighborhoods. The task of any democratically elected government, in my opinion, is to maximize the inclusion of as many people as possible in order to create prosperity, not to enable the chosen few to accumulate as much money as possible. I'm happy to report that the lowest wage in our clinics is higher than what this living wage bill is calling for, and I wholeheartedly support Alderman Cohn's call for raising the minimum wage to $15 per hour by 2020. I especially like how the bill gives some latitude to businesses that have just started or have lower revenues, and I know that he's bearing this in mind. With the support of this legislation, I know that my business and thousands of others in St. Louis will see greater demands for our services, and we can move towards an economy that doesn't just work for some, but works for everyone. So help me make that dream a reality and pass Board Bill number 83. Thank you.
Doctor, thank you. Don't stay there for a minute. Alderman French has a question.
Thank you for your testimony. Do any of your employees currently make minimum wage?
They're all, you mean 765?
Yeah.
They're all at least $3 above that.
So what is your lowest paid employee?
$10 something. I can't tell you the exact number.
$10?
Over $10.
Okay. And so if the minimum wage was increased to $15, what impact would that have on your business?
If it was increased to $15 by 2020, or if it was increased to $15 today?
Let's say 2020.
I think we would be fine.
Okay. And if it was increased more immediately, would that
If it was
have
increased today, we did some brainstorming about this in the last couple of weeks. If it would increase today, it would cost me personally about $12,000 a month.
Okay. And so if your employees right now make about 10, if there was a 15, if it was increased to 15,
You said my lowest paid employee.
the lowest employee
Most of them make more than
make
that.
far more than 15,
Not
I'm
far
sure.
more than that, more than
Right. So it's a very small percentage of employees that this would affect
Right.
at all.
Correct.
So that's unique for you. That's not every business.
Correct.
Mind you. And so for the, if there was a increase from 10 to 15 overnight, that would represent about a 50% increase for you. And you could absorb that.
Probably,
it would-
if you across the board, probably a 15, 20% increase, taking all the employees. Some of them wouldn't get an increase at all because they'd be higher.
Right. And so I'm saying, though, the employees that make $10, if we
But for
increase
them,
that,
yeah, it would be a 50% increase.
let me finish the question. The employees that make $10, if you increase that to 15, you said that would take about $13,000 out of your pocket to make that.
12,000, yeah.
So for you, that would represent about a 50% increase. Now, for businesses that currently pay their employees about $8 an hour and they jump to 15, that would represent almost a 90% increase.
Correct.
So the economics is different for different kinds of businesses.
Yes.
And for some businesses, especially in medical industry, for instance, an increase up to $10 an hour would have almost no effect because, as you say, none of your employees make less than that right now, right?
I would say that's true for my company, but I wouldn't say that's true for healthcare in general. A lot of employees, patient care techs, secretaries, dietary housekeeping in most hospitals, at the big three hospitals in this town, Mercy, BJC, and SSM, get paid $8 to $9.
Okay. But it would have no effect on you.
It would no effect on us because we run our business better than they do.
Thank you.
Any other questions from any of the aldermen in the room? God bless you. Thank you, Doctor, for coming out.
Thank you.
On the con side, Tom Cohill. Yeah, he's right there. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, Tom. I missed one off the top. I apologize. Can I get Michael Rothburn? Michael?
I'm right here, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, God bless. Thanks, Michael, for coming in. I'm sorry. I skipped over because some of the people had said they had to get out, and I was trying to accommodate them. And I apologize for
I understand,
skipping
Mr.
over
Chairman.
you.
That's all right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Michael Rathbone. I'm a policy researcher for the Show Me Institute, a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank in the Central West End. The views expressed here are my own. I think I join everybody here in wanting higher wages for lower income workers. However, I believe that raising the minimum wage is not the way to do it. In fact, raising the minimum wage will just result in more unemployment, despite the comments made by some previous witnesses. In a previous testimony, one witness referenced several studies. In the Q&A, I'd be happy to discuss those more in depth. But I would like to direct your attention to one study by the Congressional Budget Office, not a right-wing think tank by any means, who studied a federal minimum wage increase, or a proposed one, to $10 an hour. And they found that it would cost 500,000 jobs. Now, I shudder to think what that would be if it raised all the way up to $15 an hour, as this proposal calls for. I'd also like to direct your attention to another study by Jeffrey Clemens and Michael Wither of the University of California, San Diego. And what they found was that increasing minimum wage hurts the long-term earnings potentials of low-skilled workers, that the minimum wage is intended to help. And by doing that, by shutting off job opportunities, it prevents more workers from building up the necessary skills and experience to move up in the job market. And in fact, according to one study, the median, the average, I should say, minimum wage worker staying at their job for 1 year sees a 20% increase in salaries. Now, I admit that that is not universal among all workers, but on average, that is the case. And the next thing is that this minimum wage proposal, it seems like, now the Alderman can correct me if I'm wrong, is an attempt to address poverty or in some way alleviate poverty. In fact, according to one study by Burkhauser and Sabia, the minimum wage has no impact on overall poverty levels. And in fact, the majority of benefits go to people not at or near poverty. And in fact, proponents of increasing the minimum wage, for instance, Christina Romer, President Obama's former chief of economic advisors, says that increasing the minimum wage is not a very well-targeted proposal. And Andrew Card and it was Card and Kruger, or authors of some of the studies that minimum wage proponents like to cite, saying that job losses will not result, admit that raising the minimum wage is a blunt instrument, and I quote, blunt instrument, for helping people in poverty. And in fact, there are other policies in place that are better targeted to helping the poor, and I can discuss those more with the committee at their discretion. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere, Michael. Any questions for Michael from the members of the committee or any alderman in the room? Shane is first, Megan second. Shane had asked.
So what programs exactly are you suggesting help people out of poverty versus earning a wage that you make to support yourself? Huh?
Well, those that keep their jobs can support themselves first, Alderman. Second, the policy I was referencing is the Earned Income Tax Credit. And in fact, the CBO, Christina Romer, actually economists across the board think that's a better policy because it's specifically targeted to enhancing the wages of the working poor. And when you deal with minimum wages...
Can you explain for those that aren't familiar what the Earned Income Tax Credit, how it operates?
So I'll give a rough sketch of it, but it's basically when you're employed and you work up to and you qualify for under certain income levels, the government will actually subsidize your wage, so they'll give you more money up to a point, and then as you continue to earn more money, they phase it out until eventually you don't get it anymore. And Missouri doesn't have a supplement to that. Several states do. And actually, one report found that we spent $66 billion on the Earned Income Tax Credit. And I believe, and forgive me if I misquote the number, 6.6 million people were lifted out of poverty, including over 3 million children. So if we're talking about effective, real solutions to help the working poor in this country, I would suggest that the Earned Income Tax Credit would be a better policy statewide or nationally to do that.
So, sorry, but questions can only come from the members of the committee and board. But I appreciate your energy and enthusiasm around this. Who was the head of the U.S. House of Representatives when that Congressional Budget Office published that study?
Well, the head of the House of Representatives was Speaker John Boehner, but I must emphasize the Congressional Budget Office is nonpartisan.
Absolutely nonpartisan.
Proponents of Obamacare like to cite it during the enactment. So it's a statement. I can send you videos of it, sir.
I am always amused when people try and take the politics out of politics. Well,
I'm nonpartisan, sir. This is just reporting the facts.
Absolutely nonpartisan, I'm sure. So the numbers that you espouse, the 500,000 people, jobs lost if the federal minimum wage was to go up. So you're adamantly opposed to a minimum wage increase?
I believe it would be bad policy, sir.
Are you opposed to any minimum wage?
Well, whether I'd be opposed to it or not, it's state law and federal law is quite clear on what the minimum wage is.
That's not what my question is.
If pressed on it, sir, I am against the minimum wage.
So do you believe that $0 represents a real wage, minimum wage? A real minimum wage is $0.
The real minimum wage, sir, is $0 for the people who lose their jobs because of this proposal.
So, but wages are earned by those that actually have jobs, correct?
Correct, for those people who
So
keep
how
their
is
jobs.
$0 an actual minimum wage when you're working?
I believe, Alderman, you're operating under a false assumption that just because there would be no minimum wage, that wages wouldn't be negotiated by employers and employees. May I cite an example?
May I actually say, so are you suggesting that market forces drive wages?
Even Christina Romer admits that, sir.
So who is the former advisor to
She's no
President
friend of
Obama?
right-wing ideology,
So,
sir.
but are you suggesting that market forces drive wages?
I can send you the study, sir, yes.
But that's your position.
Yes, I can send you the study. I was just in Fenton where Walmart had 50 job openings, and the starting salary was $9 an hour, which is...
Do you know how hard people have had to fight to get Walmart to raise their minimum wage to $9 an hour?
How hard they fight, sir, the fact of the matter is they're offering those wages above above the minimum wage.
But there were unions and there were stockholder revolts over Walmart forcing people into poverty and onto our welfare rolls.
So I'm glad you mentioned the stockholders. So the stockholders have a vested interest in the operation of their business. And if they think it's best for their business that wages do go up, then that's their decision to make. What the minimum wage does is saying to different businesses that we know better than the mutually agreed upon wages settled on by employers and employees. And that the minimum wage does that, sir. And the more you raise it, the more people are going to be caught in it, and the more potential job losses that are going to occur.
Thank you. I always appreciate having a conversation with you.
It was better than Mark Reardon, sir.
Alderman Green. Alderwoman Green.
Thank you. So you're nonpartisan.
Yes, we're nonpartisan. If this board was made up completely of Republicans, my position would be exactly the same.
Okay, but you still are funded by Rex Singfield, and he's your president, correct?
We cannot hear the answers if everybody would just stay quiet. You've been doing a great job so far, but we want to be fair.
Mr. Singfield is our president. He is a co-founder, and he's a board member. But we have many donors, and I feel that you can direct attention to our donors or counter us on our facts and research, and I'd be happy to talk about that.
So facts and research can be manufactured by money. And, I think history has shown us that we can't really trust a lot of what Mr. Singfield puts before us because it seems to be pretty detrimental to the best interests of the city and the best interests of the poor. So I have a hard time, I think, listening to your facts here today. But I just wanted to make sure that he was, in fact, still involved with your organization. I would not consider it a nonpartisan organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions?
Sure, I'll ask questions since we're talking about Mr. Singfield. So Mr. Singfield is also the largest campaign donor to our mayor. So has Mr. Singfield expressed his dissatisfaction with any of this bill directly to the mayor who's been pushing it?
I have not discussed any aspect of this testimony or any of my research on this matter with Mr. Singfield.
Okay.
He had said out of fairness to him that he represents himself and not.
I mean, I think it's interesting that we can talk about Mr. Singfield or we could talk about the facts or the research that I've presented here.
That's all we needed to, because it could go a whole direction. We could be here all night. Any other aldermen? Okay, well, God bless you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
On the other side, we got Patrick Lepper, maybe? L-E-E-P-E-R, Lepper? If I'm reading that properly. Here, she's here. I can't read it, but that's...
Hello, my name is Brittany Scott, and I will be speaking for Patrick today, because
Okay.
unfortunately he's not able to make it, because he couldn't afford to miss a day of work. Alrighty. My name is Patrick Leeper.
She said. I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
My name is Patrick Leeper. I work at Red Lobster, making the minimum wage, tipped wage. Since I began working 10 years ago, I've struggled to support myself. I've been evicted, had my lights turned off, and walked miles to work just to save on bus fare. I am very passionate about the automotive field, but until I am paid a living wage, I can't pursue an education. We need to raise the minimum wage today. We need a living wage today. And I would also like to share another story by Latasha Chapel. She works at Wendy's. And her story is, I work at Wendy's, making $7.75 an hour. I have 3 children, one of whom also works in fast food. My partner works at Wendy's as well. Even with three people working, we can't make enough money to support ourselves. We need 15 now so that we don't have to rely on food pantries, government assistance, and churches when our checks don't cover the basics. I've been on strike many times demanding union rights and 15 an hour. I'm willing to continue standing up for myself and family, and I'm asking you to stand with me. And the next story I would like to share with you is John Lowry. He works at KFC. He's from Ward 8. Okay, my name is Johnny Lowry, and I work at Kentucky Fried Chicken. I worked for 28 years making cars for GM, but I retired after being severely injured on the job. When I couldn't make ends meet, I went back to work. I got a job at KFC as a cook. I've been working since I was 14 years old, and this is only my 3rd minimum wage job. I'm not new to the workforce, and I know how to work hard. The job I do at KFC is worth more than $7.65 an hour. St. Louis needs jobs that pay the bills and keep families out of poverty. I can't do the same job I was trained before because of my injuries, but I don't think I should be living in poverty because of that. I am asking you to support raising St. Louis's minimum wage. St. Louis needs to set a good example for the rest of the country and make sure hard-working people receive a fair pay of $15 an hour. And my next story I would like to share with you is from Landry Fort. He is 20 years old. He works at McDonald's on Natural Bridge. He is with the Show Me 15 campaign to make a difference in his community. He believes that $15 wage would be positive for the neighborhood in all sorts of ways. It would help him afford the basic necessities that he needs to support himself. It would also help many other people who work on a minimum wage of $7.65 an hour to support their families, because many of these people are moms and dads, not just individuals. A $15 wage would help him become more independent and start his own family. It could help him afford to go back to school to get into another field. $15 is a step forward to help all the working people like him, and he hopes you will support it too. And lastly, but not least, it's my story. Hello, my name is Brittany Scott. I'm 29 years old, and I've been employed at Arby's for 5 years, and I still make a minimum wage of $7.65 an hour. I support the fight for 15 because a $15 wage would help me pay for driving school and to get my license. It would also help me to afford other education. I have a degree in criminal justice, but I don't have the experience to get a job as a paralegal. $15 could help me become independent and move into my own place and afford my own food, clothing, and transportation. And I currently reside at my mother's house in the 18th Ward. And my situation is I have to walk to and from work, from Arby's, out in the heat, sweating like a wet penguin, because I can't afford to have a bus pass. We need $15 in the union right now, to this day. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Any questions from any of the aldermen? Any aldermen in the room? God bless you. Thank you for coming out.
You're welcome.
I'm going to try to speed it along only because there's about 20 plus more speakers. And so we're going to try to speed it along. Tom Coghill. Tom, thank you for understanding that I jumped earlier.
My name's Tom Coghill. I own the Iron Barley Restaurant in beautiful South St. Louis. Shane is my alderman in that area there. I was blindsided when I heard about this. I just started walking by the TV one morning. I didn't know he was sponsored a bill with any of this. With that said, I got a small 50-seat restaurant. I work 12 to 16-hour days, 7 days a week. We've been there over 12 years now. In over 12 years, I've yet to write a check to myself. I've not collected a check to myself. As a gentleman from the healthcare department downtown here, my vehicle is over 10 years old. I pay above minimum wage on all my employees and all the entry level. It's all above that. But this, I come in, before Shane got up and said, now everything's this, instead it was, this $10 an hour thing, then going up to $15 an hour, would have wiped me right off in a matter of months. The South City neighborhood I'm in is working class poor. I'm surrounded. I see this every day. Nobody wants people to be impoverished. But at the same time, there's work. I started doing this, I hate to date myself, in 1978 was my first job. And I have no idea what the minimum wage was there, or even if I've got it, I got paid $5 for the day and that was that. In the meantime, all of my increases, everything I've done, my pay was based on my work, my merit, and my leadership capabilities, decision-making capabilities as it came along. I only have a high school education, so I didn't earn the money in a lot of my positions that as someone with the same education would have gotten. But I worked hard. I worked hard every day. And with that comes a respect. With that comes now, for the past 12 and a half years, going on 13 years, I've owned my own business. And I've been fair to my employees. I'll never forget how hard I had to work to get where I was at. I wasn't handed anything. Nobody said, here, this is that. I had an application that was just filled out yesterday. There's a name on it and a phone number. And this is the people that I'm going to be giving $15 an hour to. I want to pay for the work. And I believe they work hard, but I can't. Raising the minimum wage isn't a start. It might help some now, but until the education and the rest of this is fixed, and that's a regular thing. I get these applications all the time, and I wish it wasn't that way.
Thank you. I think we're going to take about a 2-second break here so they could switch